Today, we're going to take this and put it on that, so stick around.
Welcome to the garage.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the garage, and today we're finally going to finish up the sport/drag suspension on the Silverado utilizing the QA1 double adjustable PromoStar shocks. And on top of that, we're taking a page out of the off-road guys' book. We're going to be using a spring cup adapter for the top side of the coilover mount. That way we disperse the weight, throughout. And other than that, this is, part two of finally finishing up this suspension on this truck. Whenever I converted it over to a 4-link drag suspension, I used the QA1 double adjustables. Completely changed the ride on this truck. It's amazing. So ever since then, I've been wanting to finish the front end. I've got the McGehee drop spindles on there, 2-inch drop spindles with drop struts and the factory springs on there. So, but first I want to give a shout out to QA1. Man, those guys have been nothing but helpful in this project. I've been in contact with Steve over there. He's been helping verify my measurements and calculations to the point of going in back and double checking some parts to make sure I've got the right parts set up on this, because on top of it, we've got some specialized bushings that we have to use, and we have to use a T-bar conversion kit to match how it mounts up to the bottom control arm. So the idea behind it is we're going to try to mimic the ride height. That way none of the geometry gets thrown out, and initially will not require an alignment again on it. So, but we'll see how it goes after that, and see what kind of adjustability we have. But the big thing is to just kind of give us some options on the ride. It would be nice if we can firm this thing up, make it a little bit more stable, or we can set it up for drag so it transfers weight a little bit better. So stick around and let's get our hands dirty. Okay, one of the first issues that we ran into whenever I was speccing this thing out, or actually building this thing out, was that the T-bar kit for the bottom did not fit this bushing. And even though this is how they showed it on QA1's website, and even on their drawings they said it should fit this bushing, they went back and did some measurements and came back and said, hey, this other bushing set, the B6031K one, goes with the 5-inch T-bar. The rest of the T-bars use the standard bushing. So for this one, we'll go ahead and pull this T-bar out, do the bushing swap. I'm waiting for the other bushing set tomorrow to do the other shock, but I figured let's go ahead and get the driver's side knocked out here. So let's swap this out and see if we run into any issues. On top of it though, we'll need a bushing for the top, because the bracket on here is 1.5 inches. The QA1 standard bushings are only 1.25 inches. So, but as said, these should be 1.5 inches. Should be good on both ends with this this bushing adapter set. So let's go ahead and break this thing down and swap it out if we can. that a good looking piece of hardware or what? Dirt King is the people who I got this from. Dirt King Fabrication. It is a they've got a new part number. Let me look it up here in case you're looking to do something similar. It's going to be DK 631 932. They're about $100 for the brackets. They come with really nice grade 8 hardware, so it's basically everything that you need for the mounting side of it. But let's go ahead. We're going to jump over there. Well, before we do that, let's talk about adjusting or assembling these coilovers, because the spring doesn't come on these things. The spring, you need to do the calculations, weigh your vehicle, figure out what your front weight is. There is specific calculations based on the angle of your strut that you want to take into account. And then they say to take about 45 to 50 pounds off for unsprung weight. And so on, every vehicle is going to be a little bit different. Whenever you assemble this thing, right now I haven't done it yet, but you want to make sure and use anti-seize on the threads down here where you're going to have engagement, because these things, it's too, it's aluminum, so it will gall. So that's one of the big things. You want to make sure and use some liberal amounts of anti-seize on it so you can actually make the adjustments. I'm not running the they make a bushing kit that's got a needle bearing that kind of sits in there to make it easier to adjust. I'm not going to be adjusting the height on these that often. Basically, I'm going to set the height once, and once I get it dialed back into how it looks there, I'm going to leave it alone. But this thing's ready to go in. Let's go get the wheel off, get the old one out. I can't remember if the old one will come out without having to disassemble the suspension, but if we need to, we can tear some of that down, and then we'll throw this in there, make sure everything lines up properly and button it up. So stick around. Okay, here's before and after. I mean, we're probably, we're saving maybe 5 pounds. I need to run this one down a little bit. It's a little bit shorter, and that's not taking into account that the spring's not been loaded up. I expect this thing to be probably at least 2.5 inches shorter whenever it's loaded on the spring. So I'm going to run this thing out to be equivalent of this distance, and then, which is pretty close right now. And then I'm going to go ahead and go 2.5 inches further out. And we'll start there to see how it looks. Whenever I do that, whenever I lock these in, I'm going to go ahead and put the anti-seize on there. Honestly, this thing's got quite a bit of ways to go before it's really going to bind up anyway, so that may be about perfect, who knows. Okay, there you have it. Pretty simple. You saw me stop in the middle of it and break out the plasma cutter. The T-bars were not quite lining up, and so I had to elongate the holes a little bit. You gotta remember, this is completely custom. QA1 does not make a kit designed specifically for the newer Silverados, or probably any Silverados really for the most part. Nothing this extreme. So, this is custom parts put together to fit, based on the weight of the truck and everything. If that's all we had to do to get something to fit, we're doing pretty good. The Dirt King fabrication brackets worked great. Man, they were easy to install. Everything lined up great. It's sitting about 1/4 inch, maybe a little bit more lower. I only ran it up 2 inches on the collars, so if I'd gone up to 2.5, it would probably settle. I'm going to wait until I get the other side done. I'll take it out, let it settle, remeasure it, and then make the adjustments that way. For now, the compression and rebound on it, I actually based them off the rear. Normally you would set up the front and then do the rear. I know how I like the rear so far. That might change now that I've got the fronts done, but normally you would do the fronts and then you would subtract 2 clicks on both for the rear. And that's probably in a car, so it might be even, you know, more like 3 clicks on a truck. We'll see, but right now we're running a 7 compression and a 9 rebound, so almost in the middle of the range. I believe there's 18 D-tenths of adjustment on these, if I'm not mistaken. I'd have to go back and check, but that's a good starting point. Everything's looking good, as I said. So I'm going to wrap up the other side, and the next time you see me, we're going to be driving this thing down the road and seeing how it rides. Well, so far I must say that I'm very impressed by the ride quality of this conversion. I was already pretty happy with the way that the back end rode. I mean, it's a big shift whenever you're going from leaf springs to coilovers in the rear of something. So it really smoothed out the ride. I didn't think that there was that much room for improvement on the front end, but I was wrong. The front end of the truck responds a lot better, rides a lot better, soaks up bumps, but isn't bouncy. And right now I'm kind of running in the middle range, so I can make it softer or, you know, make the ride stiffer, which I don't ever see myself making it stiffer in here. I'm not trying to autocross this thing, but pretty good results so far. You know, I had to adjust the springs up a little bit higher than well, actually it's about where I thought it was. I had to run them up 2.5 inches. Originally these shocks are designed for a 14-inch high travel spring. They don't make a high travel spring with enough spring rate to work on the front end of probably most vehicles. I think the 14-inchers run out at about 300 pounds per spring, and for something like a pickup truck you need about double that. But we were able to use the 12-inch springs and just run them up a couple inches higher than you know normally see them. So, and we still have plenty of stroke room on the shock. We're in the ideal ride height area of this shock, which is about 16 inches in this application. Your application, of course, would vary, but if you have any questions about that, give the guys down at QA1 an email or a call, and they'll be able to answer all of those. But for now, I'll say that this has been one of the better upgrades on the truck that I've done, and obviously it was a performance minded upgrade to come full circle on the suspension. Whenever we get to the point where we're actually tracking this thing at the strip, it'll be nice to have that adjustability to control the weight transfer on this thing and get the best 60-foot times that we're going to be able to do. But in the meantime, the just general drivability and overall quality of life in this truck has been improved. So we finished up the front coilover suspension, and short of the T-bar bracket, having issues with having to elongate the holes on that, it was a pretty seamless install. The upgrade's been great. You know, it makes this truck ride more like my 2005 GTO did than any of my Silverados ever had. So I'm very happy with how everything turned out. You know, for having to do something custom, QA1 was great at getting back to me, answering questions about choosing spring rates, shock heights, which components that we would need for this project. If I had one complaint, it's that the 1.5-inch bushing kits that you get from QA1 only come with 1.25-inch bushing sleeves, which are the standard sleeve width. I'd like to see them put 1.5-inch sleeves on those kits, but it's not the end of the world. Everything still works great. You know, honestly, having to make changes to the T-bar on there aren't that big of an ordeal. They come in a 5-inch T-bar. In this situation, it's about a 5.25-inch T-bar width. So, you know, if that's the only modification that we had to do to make this project work, I'm going to count that as an easy win in this book. So, Dirt King fabrication brackets work great for the upper shock mounts, and you know, for the money, I couldn't make them any cheaper than that and make them look any better than that. The hardware that came with them is great. And QA1 was great through this whole process about answering questions, getting back to me in a timely manner, and making sure that all the information that I needed was available and present. So big shout out to those guys. You know, If you enjoyed this video, hit that thumbs up, and you want to see more great content like this, hit the subscribe button down there, and we will be coming out with some really interesting stuff. Simple things to more complicated things, such as, we're going to look at spark plugs and maybe isolating some electrical circuits. And then we'll get into, we'll keep on doing the tuning series that I'm working on right now, the math tuning videos coming out in the next couple days. And then I'm going to dive back into exploring the LIN bus on these things and how you can kind of hack these cars and do some awesome things. So, as I said, hit that subscribe button. And as usual, thanks for stopping by the garage.